Welcome to the 2021 New York State World Language Professional Learning Series. My name is Candace Black, and I am your World Language Associate in the Office of Bilingual Education and World Languages of the New York State Education Department. As you know, the New York State Board of Regents voted to adopt the revised learning standards in world languages at their March 15th meeting. This is a very exciting time for our profession, and we are honored and proud to be able to present this professional learning series to support educators as they plan to transition to these revised standards. This workshop is entitled From Skills to Modes, Part 4, Planning for Learning, Integrating the Modes of Communication. In this workshop, we will build on the previous presentations on each mode of communication by developing a mindset for working with any authentic text using strategies that move learners from input in the interpretive mode to output in the interpersonal and presentational modes. Strategies for working with text in the interpretive, presentational, and interpersonal modes will be modeled using various text types appropriate for checkpoints A, B, and C. Acquisition of vocabulary and grammar and context will be modeled. Establish purpose, create focus, ensure relevance, and make your learners work harder than you. Let's review a few housekeeping details before we get started. We have over 400 pre-registered attendees today, so we ask that you remain muted and that you reserve use of the chat for questions for the presenter or for when the presenter specifically instructs participants to use this feature. If you accidentally get disconnected, just reconnect or call me and I will assist you. My cell is on the confirmation email I sent you today. Please note that this workshop is the fourth in the series From Skills to Mode. We encourage you to check out the other workshops if you haven't already. I have entered the link to the handouts folder in the chat. In this folder, you will find the revised standards, the themes and topics, proficiency ranges and performance indicators, crosswalks, and more. The PDF of this presentation will be added to this folder at the end of this workshop. Within 24 hours of this event, those who attend this workshop in full will receive either a certificate of attendance or a certificate documenting CTLE credit. The type of certificate you will be receiving was indicated in the pre-workshop email you received earlier this month. This workshop is being recorded. The video will be uploaded to the World Languages Professional Learning website within about a week of this event. Those who are unable to attend this live webinar will be able to earn CTLE credit by viewing the video and answering 7 out of 10 questions on the post-assessment correctly. Within a week of this event, all attendees will receive a follow-up email with links to the updated workshop's webpage, the handouts folder including a PDF of the presentation, and the recording. Before I introduce our presenter, I'd like to thank the following individuals for their help in assisting with this workshop: Laura Arpe, Bill Heller, Julie Kreischman, Dr. Lori Langer de Ramirez, John Liu, Dr. Joanne O'Toole, and Eris Thompson. Our workshop presenter today is Laura Terrell. Laura taught French at all levels for 21 years before becoming the coordinator of foreign language and English as a second language, and then director of curriculum in the Parkway School District in St. Louis, Missouri. She has taught methods courses at Washington University in St. Louis and Butler University and IUPUI in Indianapolis, and she continues to present frequently at the state, regional, and national levels. She has served on the board of directors for Central States and Actifel. She is the recipient of the Founders Award for Central States and has been named a Nadsville District Supervisor of the Year. Laura leads numerous workshops and projects for Actifel and is currently the Senior Associate for Professional Development for the National Foreign Language Center at the University of Maryland, working with StarTalk programs. Without further ado, it is my pleasure to invite Laura to begin this workshop.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you for joining this workshop at the end of what must be a very busy time. So I appreciate your willingness to do that, and I promise to do my best to make it worthwhile. What I wanted to do, since I am building on the 3 previous workshops, is just do like a very quick overview and then get into what may feel like a little bit of new content. But by now, you should be able to answer this question easily. What are the communication standards? What are the culture standards? And then what is that connection between proficiency and checkpoints A, B, and C? These were the focus or guiding questions of those first 3 workshops. And I don't want to spend a lot of time revisiting those, but just a brief reminder in case you missed one or two, or your busy school day lives have gotten into your brain and it's a little fuzzy at the moment. But we talk about the communication standards, and we know that those are interpretive, bringing that information in, so input. The two output standards, interpersonal, let's have a conversation, let's get together, which I know we're all hoping we can do in person soon. And then that other output standard, presentational, what can I do for an audience beyond the classroom, beyond the teacher? In terms of the culture standards, there are really two that drive what we choose to do. So culture and language go together, culture and communication go together, because we have to talk about something, we have to talk appropriately within different contexts. But we talk about the three P's, the products, the practices, the perspectives, and think about that as a triangle. You might see a product like the Chateau in Angers and think about it. It's there, it's an artifact of a culture, as is literature, art, monuments, money, tangible, touchable things are products. Practices, well, what do we do with this? Well, there's a couple of things. We need to know some history, and then we need to know what they're doing with it today. And what they're doing with it today and past history reveals perspectives of a culture. Now, as a non-native French speaker, I may or may not truly know a perspective. Just like for American culture, I only know what I know because of who I am, where I live, and what my lived experiences are. Then with that content knowledge of products, practices, perspectives, we are also comparing. So we would be thinking about this chateau, but we might be thinking about Fort Niagara. I wanted to pull something from New York State and thinking about, is this similar? Is this different? Does this reveal different perspectives? And so those are the culture standards. That's what we're going to be talking about. That's where we use the interpretive, interpersonal, and presentational modes. The connection between checkpoints and proficiency, that requires a little bit more in-depth study, or it does require having a cheat sheet in front of you. And so an image of this slide as you're designing activities, as you're designing assessments, is going to remind you, what is it that I want my learners at each checkpoint to be able to produce by the end of that checkpoint range? And so you can see that it's a buildup from simple memorized sentences and questions, still simple sentences, but now we'll put several of them together. I won't let you change the subject immediately. We won't be having a conversation where someone says, do you like ice cream? And I say, yes, I like ice cream. And I say, do you like football? And just move on. Instead, I would be ready to say, well, what kind of ice cream do you like? Do you prefer chocolate or vanilla? And then finally at checkpoint C, really connecting those emerging paragraphs and control of time frame. And so it's really incumbent upon us to notice that the first time grammar is explicitly mentioned is checkpoint C, where time frame and tense patterns enter in. So sometimes we get focused too early on things that we could do a little less of along the way. As Candace said, the themes are in the folder. And so another good slide for you to have as a quick reference point, keeping in mind what your 4 main themes are and what the subtopics are that you have put under each theme. Never an intent to do each one individually, always an intent to create that spiral and overlap between themes and topics. I wanted to step back and just remind you of the importance of the essential question in a unit. I will reference those as I'm giving you some very specific examples and remind you that this is how you prove to administrators that you are engaging your learners in critical thinking, creativity, some of these buzzwords that are really important no matter the discipline you teach. But when you can point to an essential question, show that it provokes creativity, critical thinking, that it's relevant to their lives, you've gone a lot of way to meeting standards beyond world language. The one that's here that often trips us up and is key for your administrators is knowing that the essential question must be answered in the target language. And so your questions may look more simplistic than social studies, but critical thinking, they've got to be able to do it in Italian, Russian. I was enjoying all of the chat messages in different languages and seeing the depth of languages that you teach there in New York, which is wonderful. So that was your brief overview. That was a review. Hopefully that's in your bag of tricks pretty solidly. If not, do as Candace asked and go back and revisit those workshops when you have more time and can think about it more deeply. But today, what we really want to think about are strategies for authentic text in each mode of communication, because we're trying to bring these three modes together, selecting that text that really ties to the theme and essential question, really thinking about how much we can get out of it. We want to be Mr. Rogers instead of Sesame Street. For some of you who are older and understand that analogy. And then looking at a couple of examples of vocabulary and grammar in the context of a text. Because anytime you have an authentic text, you have authentic language, which means you have current grammar structures and current vocabulary. So really beneficial. So quick review, interpretive mode. I know it's the end of your day. Just take a quick look at this slide and which of these, either you can do it either way you want, are indicative of the interpretive mode, or if you would prefer to focus on the ones that are not, but just put this list in your mind, kind of think, oh, that one's not, this one is. Let me give you like 30 seconds to do a quick processing. Okay, so hopefully you move the ones that just slid over and said, yes, these are interpretive mode. That was covered very well by Joanne earlier. So you probably have these and you saw these as, no, this is not part of our interpretive mode. And the biggest change that we make is giving up translation. The idea that when they read, when they listen in the interpretive mode, we need to check for understanding by asking them to use first language. That tends to be the one that is a stumbling point in a real true embrace of the interpretive mode. So let's think about, I want to give you one example with each mode before we pull them all together. If you have this image, you're working, say, on what is an ideal escape unit, or you're working in that notion of vacation time. What is an ideal vacation? Recognizing descriptions of tourists and travelers. You found this one's going to be in French. And this happens to have all kinds of quick little statements about different types of travelers. And I'm just going to translate a couple of them, show you the rest. Consults Facebook every day. I guess now it would be Instagram or another account, not necessarily Facebook. Students do thumbs up, thumbs down, right, left, which one's the tourist, which one's the traveler. You keep going through. Refuses, continues to speak in their language, which one, tourist or traveler. So all you're doing is selecting that text that implies culture. This came out of a French article. You can imagine who they were making fun of in this article and who they were defining. You know, my motto for traveling is Hakuna Matata. I get lost intentionally. I always follow a guide. I send postcards. Nobody does that anymore. I order my coffee in the local language. I, at 9 o'clock, complain about the breakfast served at the hotel. It's not big enough. Hotels are to avoid, stay with locals, eat at McDonald's so I don't get food poisoning. Little fact there, 22% of people who do eat at McDonald's get food poisoning. I collect teaspoons from every place I go, or I choose to eat local cuisine where only 2% get food poisoning. And so all you're doing is asking them to look, to react, to interpret, to signal. Line by line gives you a chance to introduce, act out, add images, make the message comprehensible without translation, interpretive mode. So then you move into the interpersonal mode where we're going to have to interact. spontaneously. Nothing's rehearsed in advance. Just like when somebody approaches you with a conversation, a tough question, and you have to deal with it. It's not always smiles like in that one image. So if we think about it, same thing, let me give you 30 seconds. In this case, find the ones that are not interpersonal. There's fewer of them. Okay. So we'll go ahead and do the same thing. Here are the indicators of the interpersonal mode, which Bill did a great job explaining. So go back and do that one if you need to for a refresh. And here are the ones that are not interpersonal. And very often in moving to the standards-based, performance-based classroom, this is the one that is the hardest to implement in assessment. The idea that two students talk to each other, that they don't know the prompt until the day of the assessment, that it can't be memorized, it's not a role play, it's not a skit. This can be one of the hardest ones to really bring into our practice if it's something you haven't done yet. So just know that. But it's not that hard to do. So here's a quick example. Let's say it's in a unit on food. Let's eat. What role does food play in our lives? And my goal is that we can talk over which of these 4 we want to eat. So 4 authentic pictures from when I lived in Puerto Rico, 4 things that I actually ate and tried, because of course that showed me to be a tourist, taking pictures of my food. You can see the culture that's coming in through the images. So even though it's a level 1 class, I'm infusing communication and my culture standards at the same time. And so I'm going to be teaching you how to talk about these. So I no longer give students a list of just words. I give them the question and answer frame so that they can say, do you like? Yes, I like mofongo. No, I don't like mofongo. Those are considered to be the frames, which are far more important than words. And then key ingredients in mofongo so that I can actually say, yes, I do. No, I don't. I hate garlic. So which reason do you like it or do you not? Do that with all 4 of those images, give them the images and they have a conversation that they can have. So they actually build to where they can really talk about, which do you like? Why do you like it? Where do you want to go? I want to go to such and such a restaurant because I really want to try some paella. What are you going to get? Do you want to share? How is it? And you're using in the interpersonal mode in your instruction, question and answer frames so that they are built. And later I will raise this up in a couple, so you're more at checkpoint BC. Presentational mode. Got some images to remind you of what the presentational mode is. It's changing a little bit now. Everybody can be always in the presentational mode with video blogs and blogs. They're published, they're out there. Give yourself 30 seconds. And I think there's only 3 that are not indicative of presentational. Okay. So here are the ones that are indications of presentational mode. One of them that is really important and has to be a focus is there's an intended audience beyond the teacher. And I know that's something that Lori stressed in her presentation. So, and by the way, the 3 of you that preceded me, I enjoyed all of yours when I watched them. So the 3 that are not, it's not 2-way. Whatever I say today, you are just listening to it. There's minimal interaction, although I promise I'm going to pause for questions or comments a couple times. If you are giving a project and you are the only audience, why are you giving the project? Because you have nothing to do on a weekend and you want to grade? That's not a good reason. So always thinking about, they're going to invest time and effort. Who is the audience beyond the teacher? And it's important to be in the presentational mode because it gives them a chance to refine their language. They get to use resources, they get to ask questions. And so it has a real benefit in the classroom. However, the presentational mode is the least used mode in the real world. So don't let it take over your classroom. Interpretive and interpersonal are the most important. So we have to think about that, especially with our beginners. So we don't want to overdo presentational and lose time for interpersonal. You just have to kind of think about it. It does not have to be a project. Presentational mode does not have to be a big, massive project. Here's one in terms of our ecological footprint. I can describe clean energy. We did a reading. Now I just want you to do what's called a found poem in English language arts. And so they go in, they choose a phrase, clean energy, and then they work with the article and find phrases that as you put them together kind of create a poem. And I put that poetry type site there because it has something like 65 different poetry types. And they're great little short writings for students to practice in the presentational mode without making it a big deal, which can be more appropriate. I see that quick question on presentational, so I'll come back to it in just a second. So it's a good point. I put the word retrieval because it is a reminder that every 20 minutes or so, you should be stopping in your middle school, high school classrooms more frequently for younger learners and allowing them to think about what they have learned or to reprocess previous content. So while I just put these up and you feel free to put something in the chat, I thought I would pause here and let the moderators come in for a question, but I'm going to answer the one that I caught. And I see some great answers in the chat. I would never have my students, 30 students in a class, and my largest class was 42, level 1. I would never plan for all 42 students to present to the class. It would be in gallery walk format, using Flipgrid, watching 5 others, something that breaks that up, makes it much more manageable, and keeps it real. The other thing to consider is, do you need a spoken presentation in a lower level classroom, or would a written presentation be enough? Because remember, even when they get to AP, it's only a 4-minute spoken presentational communication. So sometimes we overdo it in lower. Lots of ways to do it without having that stand up and present and losing a week of instruction. So let me pause for a minute. Are there any questions out there that somebody's really put? And if not, we'll move forward with more.
Laura, thank you for this. This is so wonderful. This is Lori. Hi. A lot of chat about Flipgrid and using that, and questions about students asking follow-up questions. Can you talk a little bit about
Flipgrid is an
for
excellent
presentational?
Flipgrid. But I'm not going to connect Flipgrid right now to presentational. Obviously it is, because there's time to think, but a lot of teachers this year in particular, where we've been remote, have been using Flipgrid as a stopgap to interpersonal. And I think it's really great for that, because it's going to make it much easier to transition to true interpersonal, where I post something and then my friend responds and asks a follow-up question, and they almost get into it because it's a back and forth. It's a little bit like texting, but you can have that visual or something there. So it's a great tool for both pre-interpersonal and presentational. Padlet's a good presentational also. That will be just writing mostly. I think you can comment on it too, but there are a host of apps that came out over the course of this year to do that. Moat, where you can do interpersonal, but I'm not an expert on that technology. Anything else?
So Laura, this is Joanne, and
Hi,
I just want to take you back to the question you started to respond to earlier. I get the sense that there may be a little bit of confusion between students giving presentations and presentational communication. Could you just offer a clear differentiation there?
Well, one is what students do, and the other is probably the definition. Presentational communication is speaking or writing for an intended audience. It's rehearsed, it's practiced, it's polished. So the way that you see evidence of this is either in that formal writing that they've done, or that clean energy poem where they had time to work with it and produce the best writing that they could, or they do a presentation speaking for an audience. So one is the doing and the other is the preparation, I guess would be my distinction. But no one says you have to do both. And of the two, the writing always precedes speaking. I'm not doing speaking right now with having carefully thought. And when I first did it, I wrote everything out. I have one coming up I have to do in French. I'm going to be writing that one out before I do it, right? Writing precedes speaking. Hence, maybe writing is sometimes enough without the formal speaking.
Thank you, Laura. I don't see any other questions right now.
We'll go get some more examples and trust that you'll go back. So you cannot underestimate the power of an interesting picture, nor can you underestimate the fact that pictures, real pictures, are cultural artifacts. So the use of clip art should be discouraged as fast as possible. So as you gradually, if you're thinking about how can I do all of this, how can I implement these standards, one way is just to gradually start replacing any clip art images with authentic images, because they're going to grab the attention of your learner much more quickly. So if you think about this, I found this image and I have this article and I checked, it's still there. If Spanish teachers want to go and grab the whole thing, what do I do with it? This is the number one thing I get asked. I found it now, what do I do with it? And so when you're thinking about it, you're developing this mindset that goes with any text. So first, how does this article that I found, this picture, connect to a unit? Which theme is it? And what essential question is going to help my learners answer? Otherwise, I have to set it aside and use it for some other purpose, some other unit. Do I see it connecting with my unit goals? So it's not just, oh, this showed up last night on my Facebook post and it's really interesting, so I'm doing it in class tomorrow. I have to be really intentional about why this at this time. And then when I see it, obviously I think interpretive mode right away. But what I really want to think is, how do I use this in all three modes? And so you're actually trying to say, how can I take this one article, this one image, and work it to death? And we need to do that because we don't acquire vocabulary until we use it 20 times in context. Repeat after me does not count for a single time. So in order to get them to learn the new vocabulary that's going to come out of this article, to acquire it, I need to stick with this article, this theme, this topic for a longer period of time. And so this is one of the resources that's in the Google folder, but I'm going to break it down for you. So now I have it. I ask myself, what am I going to do with it in each mode? In order to do something with language, you must have a language function. So you have to write a goal that conveys what the learner is going to be able to do. So these become learning targets for our daily lessons. They show up on our boards. At lower levels, they're definitely written in English. So the weakest learner clearly knows the purpose. Why are we doing what we are doing? So it's language function and context, learning target. I can describe pets, learning target. So any of these statements tell the learner exactly what you want them to be able to do at the end of your instructional 20-minute segment. They're clear, but what's lacking is context. You haven't said yet what it is you want them to do. So you need to be very thoughtful about your goals. In this particular unit, you're going to be thinking, okay, who am I? Who are you? What determines our identity? And I'm going to focus on these two goals. You can see how it relates to that picture of that kid. We're talking about selfies and self-portraits, and there's surely a story behind that selfie. And so this is what we're going to be building our capacity to do when I use this. Some of my functions are going to be input, I'm not going to ask you to do anything. You don't have to say a single word in French. All you have to do is signal, sort, identify, label, match. Yes, no, I'm not ready for language production yet. Or some of them are going to be output, and these are in that folder also. And when it's output, all of these verbs work for both interpersonal, maybe not all of them, but most are interpersonal and presentational. So you're going to have to help them know which mode they're in. So if we think about that particular image, the one of that boy with the bull behind him, here's what I'm thinking. I can do these things in the interpretive mode. I can ask them to sequence events. I can identify his personality and character traits. I can, in the interpersonal mode, tell a story and ask you about your stories. I can exchange information about a selfie. We're both looking at a selfie on our cell phones. And where were you? When did you take this? Who are you with? In the presentational mode, I can tell you something. I can describe something. So out of one article and one picture, I'm going to do all this. I am going to literally stay on this as long as possible. So let's look at what that might look like. I have to think, what am I going to do before the text? What am I going to do during the text? And what am I going to do after? So how am I going to set purpose, keep them focused, and make it relevant? Those are the three things I have to keep in mind. So purpose is key. I'll show you some of those. Focused, I want to just say one more word about, because there are a couple of words there that trouble people sometimes. This word active. If you have ever read an article, you're reading a page, you read the page, you get to the end of the page, and you realize you didn't read the page. You were thinking about dinner. You were thinking about a problem, and you're like, oh, but my brain, my eyes were still reading. We need to keep our learners from doing that. You read silently, never aloud, not even for pronunciation. And you do not read with a partner. You read alone. Read alone. Because if you pair them, then if Lori is really good and I'm her partner, she'll translate it for me. And so 50% of the readers, Lori gets better, Laura coasts. So reading by it, reading, focused reading, I give them something to do. They read silently and they read alone. And then after reading, what will we do? And we just need to think that through. So you got 3 modes and you got before, during, and after. So here are some strategies. Brainstorm. We always want to reactivate prior knowledge or activate prior knowledge. So I might say, hey, you get a minute to write down all the words you can, a minute to share that list with another partner, group them in 3s or 4s, share their lists, beg, borrow, and steal, make lists longer, go around the room, make up a class list of words they already know. It might be red and gray. Whatever they can come up with allows you to get them to display what they've truly learned, and then you can add to it. So you're beginning to create purpose. You might say, okay, just write down some questions you have. Where is he? What is he doing? What is his name? Then pair and ask and answer those questions. So no more worksheets. They do all the work. They write the questions. They pair, they ask each other, go around the room, call on kids, question, answer, question, answer. They haven't even read the article yet, maybe. They're just doing it off the picture. One more. So you would never do all of these. These are just all ideas. Maybe I make them predict by writing a headline or a photo caption, or maybe I make them make up the first paragraph. After they do that, I show them the article and they can see what was actually written. So they increased their vocabulary because they wanted to say bull, but all they could say was big black animal. But as soon as they read, then they learn a new word, and they wanted the word, then the brain's more likely to hold on to it. So things that you can do before to get them in, even really just using a picture. So not as hard as we sometimes make it out to be. So then what are you going to do when you're actually reading to keep them engaged? Remember, you have to do active, guided, silent reading. So you might be asking them to look for the words that are most important, or the most important sentence, or the key idea. And basically what you're looking at is checkpoint A, checkpoint B, checkpoint C by what you ask them to do, because it's where are they? So when I show you this, maybe I think that toros, bull, is an important word. Can I tell you why? Or peligroso, dangerous, is an important word. Can I tell you why? Or filmarse, to take a picture. Can I tell you why? So you're actually letting them create their own worksheet as they read. Another one, I promise you I won't just keep talking, I'll stop in a minute. This is an easy strategy because it's no work for you. Read, cover, remember, retell. Okay, so we still want to do pair work when we're reading. It makes it more interesting. So now I'm going to be a partner with Candace, and we both have this article. And I tell the students to read through Pamplona, Spain. We both read silently, and then I draw my magic card and I say, okay, person with the longest hair, you're talking. So what happens? We both read it. Now the person with the longest hair has to cover it, turn it over, don't look at it again. I'm still looking at it. And the person with the longest hair tells me what they remember. I ask them questions, or if I'm not very good in Spanish, which I'm not, I just read to them anything they forgot to say. Then we pair again. We read the second paragraph silently, pull a card. Oh, person with the longest hair. Sorry, Candace, you have to do it again. Always random, so they don't think they're off the hook on the second paragraph. And we practice. And what you'll find out when you do that, do it in English with somebody, it's really hard to remember everything you read in a paragraph. Your brain darts off. So our ability to retain is a way of learning it the first time. No worksheet to prepare, read, cover, remember, retell. Nothing you have to do in advance. And we need more of those strategies. And here it was in English. So you can see that they might be saying, as they were pairing and retelling, the boy's name is Christian. He was at the bull run in Houston, and he took a picture. And that's all I say. Well, you might say, oh, like, what festival is that like? Or what does that make you think of? Oh, the running of the bulls in Pamplona. So you're just using a strategy. The more you do it, the better they get at it. You could have also said, read silently. And as you read, same strategy as before, write questions that are answered in the article. Take a few minutes, they each write their own questions. Then we pair. I ask my question, my partner answers mine. Partner asks me a question, I answer theirs. We're moving towards interpersonal, and I didn't have to create a worksheet. So this is the idea that you can make your students do the work instead of you. Sometimes I think we have to do everything to make it perfect for them, but learning is messy, and they're the ones that need to be the messy participants. Now we've done a lot of interpretive strategies. They really understand the article, hopefully. I've done enough that they've been using the vocabulary. So I come up with interpersonal ideas. Role play an interview with this young man who's kind of stupid. Share your opinions of this person, and maybe you're more towards B, and you can talk about some of the dangerous things you've done that you probably wouldn't do again. Or a teacher came up with this one when I was sharing this once. Role play the conversation this young man might have with their mom. after she saw this picture posted on social media. So what picture showed up on social media that you wish your mom had never seen? Why don't you get with your partner and talk about that and imagine that and role play that conversation? So you're extending it in a way that relates to their lives and is not just about this person they don't know. It's you use this as a leverage to move forward. Presentational mode, because this was on a social media page, you could comment. So anytime you have a YouTube video or anything, if comments are not turned off, they can post their comments there. So it's a real presentational writing. There's an audience, right? Somebody might read their comment or tweet if it's an event. You can go on a Twitter feed on any in your own language, and they can participate in that discussion. Or the goal of the unit, pick a selfie or take a selfie and tell me what happened. Where were you? Who were you with? So we're using one selfie, one article, we're springboarding it, and it's a week of activities. So what we often do is the Sesame Street approach, where we try to change what we do. We change the video, we change the reading, we change every day. It has to be something different. But what we know for learning is Mr. Rogers had it right. Take a theme, take a topic, do it in depth, make sure they build understanding, stick with it, find 3 or 4 good things in a unit, and that's what you need. You don't need something new or different every day. So that's kind of the mindset for authentic text. So I'm going to pause here. I invite you to comment 1 or 2 things in chat. What do you want to keep in mind that you heard me say, or what idea do you want to share? And then those of you that are moderating, while people are thinking about that, are there any questions out there that I should answer?
Laura?
Tiffany, that's an excellent question. It's 90% plus target language for all levels for instructional purposes. For assessment purposes in the interpretive mode, that falls into the 10% category where you can use English to check comprehension. But your goal really is, if you can't do it in the target language, they are not ready for it. So one of the hardest rules I ever had to adopt for my own personal teaching was no grammar explanations in English. Changed my world completely. I highly recommend you adopt it. Everything in the target language. Others, I thought you were going to ask something. Maybe Lori, were you?
Yeah, Laura, thank you. So a lot of appreciation for the idea of the deep dive and not having to look for so many resources. And I love the idea of Sesame Street versus Mr. Rogers. That is going to stick with me personally. A question about no worksheets. And this is related to how to best support learners, particularly learners who might be second language learners themselves or students with learning issues.
Well, I think that, I will say no worksheets, but then I'll break my own rule and I will create a worksheet that I need, like with pictures where they're going to write captions. Or so it's not that there's no worksheets, but there's no worksheets where for the interpretive mode, you write the questions and they write the answers. That is actually dumbing down interpretive work, because the hunt and peck method of reading is not that hard. So a good reader can find the answer. It's not the best thing we can do for our weakest learners is it has nothing to do with worksheets. It has everything to do with telling them what the learning target is. Today, this week, we are working on describing pets. And I'm going to be giving you an opportunity every day to work within that context. And at the end of the week, or when I want to check, you're going to do something in the target language that it is designed so you can show me what you can do. Like, here's a picture, write the best description you can. That's going to tell me whether you're novice mid, novice high, intermediate low. and what your next step in language learning is. The biggest mistake we make for our weakest learners is giving them any type of set of assessment that requires memorization and perfect attendance, because those two things really work. The memorization, because not everybody has that brain, and the attendance, because some of our weakest learners have issues that cause them to miss school. So it's very freeing, and students start to do better when the focus is on, I can, now show me what you can do. Instead of my expectation, you should be able to, and I'm going to check for right or wrong. So performance assessment, the type of activities I'm suggesting, are designed to let you show me what you can do. My old fill in the blank testing, my verb endings, those were all designed to show me what you couldn't do. So it's a mind shift in so many ways to this performance in the 3 modes. Anything else? I totally agree with even that pre-teach vocabulary. Imagine pre-teaching vocabulary. Any of you out there that have someone under age 3, you're all teachers, you're already reading to them every night. Do you pre-teach the vocabulary of the book you're getting ready to read? So do you have to give them a vocabulary quiz before they can read it? No, it comes up in context. You point to a picture, you act it out. And half the time they don't know half the words you're reading to them. Because when you're on the 30th reading of a book, a child that's getting older will say, I remember my grandson saying to me once, Mima, what's fought? And I was like, I've read this spider book to you 30 times at least. And I did want to say it's the past participle of to fight, but I didn't. And so I just calmly explained it to him and we went on. He didn't notice that word for the first 30 readings. I hate to tell you this, but that's your students too. They're not noticing all of it. So you have to make it okay to do it when they're ready, so you're going to hear my cat in the background. I'm going to pick him up in a minute. Any other questions out there, or we'll go on and do another segment so we for sure finish.
Laura, you have one other question in the chat asking if you ever create vocabulary lists that are teacher generated.
Yes, I do. I will send you a sample vocabulary list and Candace can put it in, but I believe that vocabulary lists should be functional and more based on question and answer frames with fewer words. One moment. Sorry. He's 21 years old and he will not stop unless I pick him up. He can't jump anymore. So yes, but it's a very different, it's not your textbook vocabulary list, and it's only a few words and not those laundry lists like food used to be 150 words, or sports was every sport I could think of. And then a kid would raise his hand and say, how do you say parasailing? And I'd be like, I didn't know. So it's 10 words for sports and activities. And then what ones do you want to know? Figure that, I'll help you learn those. Okay. So yes, I do. And I will get that to you. So let's look at one other option. If we go this unit, so see how all those activities actually worked to talk about selfies, to talk about the stories of selfies. And you can find a million pictures of selfies and do that. The essential thing was when I designed a task, assessment, I'm opening it up to students. It's a little bit about what I answered in that question. This particular task, when they're in the interpersonal mode, it allows them to function somewhere between novice high and intermediate low. I mean, maybe they have a headache that day and normally they're intermediate low, but they're novice high. I need to let them show me where they are so I can coach them to move forward. And I want to get to the next example. So coaching them up is what we have to do with all functions. It's fine to say, what is your name? But by the time a child is a teenager, They use their questions to manipulate you. Why can't I go? Well, what if I do this? Well, how come you said? And so what we have to keep in mind is there's no point to where we teach the interrogatives. Interrogatives are a part of language always. It's how we're able to use the interrogatives that's important. So we want to recycle, recycle, recycle. So if we go into this idea of how do the choices we make impact our health? Let's look at healthy and unhealthy behaviors and stress. Let's come up with our can-do statements for one resource. So brainstorm with your colleagues, help each other out. We all have good ideas. If we put them together, these aren't that hard to come up with. I'm going to be showing you a video, just the start of it, and then French teachers, you can go and watch it later. But it's going to be Kinvi's video, Ma Vie au Soleil, if you know it. But why wouldn't I start by just, here we go. Do you want to live on an island? Why or why not? What are islands? Which islands can I live on if I want to speak French? Let's pull that world map in. So there's a lot of things that we can do before we even show the video. And Edpuzzle is a perfect example of a really good tool that teachers are not thinking about before, during, and after. The piece that's done in Edpuzzle is the during. What did you do before you sent them to Edpuzzle? And what are you doing after? Edpuzzle was interpretive. What are you going to do in the interpersonal and presentational modes with that video? So you're always trying to get as much as you can out. I'll just show you a whole bunch of pictures and say, okay, categorize them. Be ready to tell me why you put which pictures with which. I might put gardening with work. You might put gardening with fun. So how do you categorize washing a car? Some people love it, some people hate it. So what are you thinking about? Categorize them. Introduce new vocabulary this way as you point to an image, call attention to it, talk about it. Screenshot videos. So here coming from the video, you have the singer saying, "J'en ai marre du stress, I'm fed up with stress. I want to live on a beach of sand. It's decided I am leaving to live my life in sunshine." And so just introducing a couple of pictures, a couple of phrases, and now let's go back to those pictures and put them with each statement. Which would you put with "I'm fed up"? And which would you put with "that happy lifestyle"? And so the English translation is there. Let's give them some choices. You decide, what do you think? You've only got 2 images. You're predicting. What would he say about each of these statements? Bring them in one at a time. Is this a worksheet? Yes, but I'm controlling it. I'm not passing it out. I'm doing it on my PowerPoint. One at a time, thumbs up, thumbs down. Yes, no. Does he hate to work? You decide. Is he a teacher? You decide. Is he stressed because of work? Oh, he must be a teacher. Does he prefer the beach because he's lazy? Does he talk on the phone? Does he love to swim? Here's one that's got a new word, fish. Oh, I need to go grab another picture to make a vocabulary word understandable. So we do that kind of teaching of vocabulary in advance. Now you would show the video, and I'm just going to start it. I'm going to mute it. I thought I had it muted. Never show a video with sound the first time because they can't understand the words anyway. So let them begin to see the video, process the images, and as soon as you see mega urgent, you'd stop and say, what's on your list of mega urgent things to do? You don't need to show a whole video in one class period. You can look for the moments in the video that are cliffhanger moments. Predict, what do you think is going to happen next, so that you can get a lot out of it. This video happens to be great because it even has things in it that are color. Like here's this sepia color at work, and here's the colors on the beach. And the whole video goes through like this. So you'd come back and you would predict again. because now you saw the video without sound. You have more information in your head, and it gives me a chance to do vocabulary and context again. We're going to hear all these again, but we have a reason for hearing them again. And then we'll play it again with sound and do it again. And they're starting to build comprehension. And when you think they've built comprehension, you don't want questions about a music video. You want to do something with it. Maybe you want to do that closed reading activity. Already, just because I said a few things, you could probably fill in 3 or 4 of those blanks. You can figure out the words I took out because out of context, you know what should go there. After they've worked with it this way, they can pair and check their answers. You can show them a word bank. They can do it again. Basically, what teachers do is we do too much, too fast. And so we need to slow down and take our time. Now you're going to see that I'm going to move a little faster, more vocabulary. What do you do to eliminate stress? Oh, I think it's time for some grammar. What do you want to do? I want to sing. When do you want to sing? I sing on Fridays. I sing on Fridays. When do you sing? And we're looking at patterns, verb conjugations. Do you see the difference? Why is it different? What's going on? You can use 10% in grammar to ask them to tell you the rules. Students can explain the rules to you. You can't explain the rules to them. So it's grammar in context. I want to dance, I dance. I want to sing, I sing. And we all know in French and Spanish, this is really hard. So it helps us to say, it's time to stop and review this. Let's put it in context. Let's do it in interpersonal. Let's pick pictures. Find the person who wants to do the same thing that you want to do. What do you want to do? When do you want to do it? So now I can listen. So all of a sudden, my grammar is in context. With my predictions of yes or no in those pictures, my vocabulary was in context. I've got a grammar point I want to address. I bring it out again. 3 weeks later, they're still struggling. I find another way to bring it out of context. So I'm not reviewing, I'm just coming back to it because they will not learn grammar. They will not learn it. You cannot learn it. You can only over time acquire it. You want to bump that up. Everything's been kind of low level. What did this person want to do? What did he doubt? What did he seem, what was important to him? Are we working in the subjunctive? Yeah. Am I telling him to use the subjunctive? No. Because if I tell them to use the subjunctive, they will. But then when they do it for real, they'll forget. So I want to see what they do. Do they know it now or not? So we really can do our grammar, but we can do it in the context of whatever text we've picked up to use in the modes. I want to give you these last couple of examples. We need to make them better writers. We want to bring them up in proficiency. So here's some key words. Tell them to write a summary. I need them to write a summary and use all 8 words. That takes them forever. And the sentence text type is a complex sentence. Or give them 5 simple sentences and tell them to write 1. Now they have to use like a relative pronoun. So all of a sudden you're not teaching relative pronouns, you're just showing them how they can become a better writer. French teachers, I always taught relative pronouns in level 3. Key can be taught in level 1. It's easy. It doesn't have to be contrasted with que. That's just a textbook thing. So we're right at the end. So my thing is, you could put in the chat, what is one thing you might do prior to the end of the year? And send yourself a text so you remember, because you're way too busy right now. And while you're thinking about that, before I take questions, I'm just going to do 2 closing things and then I'll stay on if you want. So think about it this way: before, during, after. Interpretive, interpersonal, presentational with every text you find. Just get that mindset in your head and it will get a lot easier for you. And then those were the goals, and you can decide if I did it. But this is what we have to do. Focus is a matter of deciding what things you're not going to do. You are not being asked to do more. You're being asked to use your time as well as you can so that you can focus on what we know to really make a difference. So I'll leave you with that thought. I'm reading your chat, but I'm happy to answer questions or stay on. And my email is there, and you are welcome to email me directly if you have a question. But there are a lot of you, so it might take me a while to get back to you. Are there some questions that popped up that I should address real quickly?
Laura, so many takeaways. Folks are really excited about many of the things you said. A quick question for clarification, because so many of the examples you've used were in English. Somebody was wondering, just again, are these, is this normally done in the target language?
Everything that I showed was in English because of the mixed audience, but all of this would have been target language, including giving directions would have been target language.
Thank you.
Model, act out, make it work.
Laura, there was also a question about, could you recommend any sources for essential question ideas and where to get a better sense of how to create thematic essential questions?
Well, Donna and I have quite a bit on a section on essential questions in our book. You can always go to Wiggins and McTighe, but their essential questions aren't great. If you Google, isn't Greece High School in New York?
Yes, it is.
They have one of the best lists of essential questions for world languages out there. So it would be a really good starting list. And I'm sure if you Google it, or maybe you guys can find it or ask them if you can put it on the website. I know I've downloaded it from them, but that doesn't mean I have permission to share it. But it's one of the best I've ever seen.
Thank you.
Other questions that were out there? Well, I know it was a lot of information in a really short amount of time, but that's why it's recorded. So you can go back and hopefully listen to it again or have the slides. And I would be more than happy if you need a follow-up question, be sure and ask and I will get back to you. And it was Greece High School, like the country, Greece. I think it is, isn't it?
Yes, it is, Laura.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for a wonderful workshop, and thanks to all the staff who helped facilitate this event. Before I pass it on to Joanne for an exciting announcement, please stay on. I want to remind you that all attendees will receive either a certificate of attendance or a CTLE certificate within 24 hours. You're also going to get a workshop badge. We started issuing digital badges this year. So when you receive your badge, consider adding it to your email signature or posting it to social media to spread the word about world language professional learning. The recording of this workshop and the accompanying post assessments will be made available on the OBEWL Professional Learning website within a week from today. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Joanne O'Toole for information on our next workshop and a brand new resource created for world language educators.
So I have a quick request of Laura to stop sharing so that I can share a couple slides.
Of course.
Oh, no, no worries. I think we're all getting to be pros at
Manipulating.
oh, the screens, right? The screens. So I have two announcements to share with everyone. And the first one is that we have already scheduled our next session, which will be on Wednesday, June 9th, 2021, from Facts to Functions, the Culture Standards. And Dr. Lori Langer de Ramirez and I will kind of tour you through our two culture standards, standards 4 and 5. Registration is now open at the OBEWL Professional Learning webpage. When you receive your email from Candy Black after this session, she will send you a link so you can go in and register. So we will familiarize you with the two culture standards, the elements of each, and we'll share strategies for enacting these at each of the 3 proficiency checkpoint levels. And the other announcement is that we have a new resource for you. Some of you may already be familiar with a Wakelet. A Wakelet is a free online curation site that allows for resources to be directly linked. And this one was curated by the project assistant to our World Language Standards Initiative, Serena Shaber, who is on this call today. And she has been working for the last 5 months to create this for you. It is specifically around authentic resources. And on this site, which is linked below and also from the OBEWL webpage, you will find links to curated authentic resource collections by language, to blog and website posts about authentic resources, to podcasts, presentations, workshops about authentic resources, books, book chapters, as well as a how to even use the Wakelet resource. So if you're unfamiliar with it, she guides you through that as well. And a place for you to suggest additional collections, blogs, posts, and so on that we might potentially add to the Wakelet. So as you come to embrace and enact the standards, this will be a really important go-to site. So there's our announcements.
I want to thank everyone for coming. Don't worry, when I send you the follow-up email, I'll include all of the links to that. Once again, thank you so much, Laura. It was a wonderful workshop. We really
Pleasure, everyone.
it for us.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.